G'day Bush Camping Tools here. Well, I want to talk today about a new release from Boreal, and that is the Boreal Brenta, and it's a new release for 2021. They did have a Boreal Brenta for 2020. It looked a bit different to this one, and that was that the 2020 model had the sticky rubber rand running all around the outside of the rand to the other side like this, but they've changed it slightly. They've got the sticky rubber rand running from this side here, and instead of continuing the sticky rubber rand round to this side, what they've done is they've got this polyurethane material around there. They're probably thinking along the terms of, they're trying to market this boot towards via ferrata, and if you're going to be edging and using the actual sticky rubber for something like that, you're going to have the inside of your foot, you're going to have your feet turned sideways, and that's where the greatest wear will be on there. And you don't need it on the outside of your boot, because you're not going to have your outside of the boot, you're not going to have the outside of the boot against the cliff face, but you might have this side of the boot definitely across the cliff face. So how this review will work is, this is not a desktop review. As you know, I don't do desktop reviews, so this is the show and tell. We've already had the boots out in the field, and I'll cut to some of that footage in a little bit, but it's easier to show you some things about the boots here in the office rather than trying to show it to you out in the field. It's a bit too difficult. So firstly, as you can see with this boot, it is a boot which will take, it's got a rigid section of plastic in it, and so it's a boot that can take a semi-automatic crampon. We'll look at that in a bit, where I attach crampons to the boots. You can take a semi-automatic crampon and attach to the boot, so it's laterally and in this direction, and also laterally stiff enough to take a crampon. It's a fairly lightweight boot. Now, where does Boreal sit this in terms of the marketing for these boots? Where do they place these boots? Well, they say they can be used for anything from summer hiking to via ferrata, having to cross glacial fields, some light snow and ice, and not be too heavy or uncomfortable to actually walk to your site where you're going to go climbing, where you're going to do the via ferrata, etc., etc. So what I did was, I decided I really wanted to put these boots through their paces for various reasons, and one of those was to test this waterproofness of this thing called their Dryline. Okay, their Dryline. And let me talk about this Dryline material. That the boot is being treated with this waterproofing material, which is really a proprietary material from Boreal. Now, I want to say first, this is leather. All this orange material here is leather, but the problem is this leather is not like Pearl Angel leather. It's not waterproof. The leather is not waterproof, and they actually recommend that you use this stuff here, this Boreal waterproofing material. Now, they don't say, of course, it's all in Spanish on here, naturally enough. They don't say what it is. It's probably a silicone type material, waterproofing material. This stuff is flammable, even though it doesn't come in the standard kind of, people might be familiar with the pressure pack sprays of waterproof materials. There's no pressure pack. This is just pump action like that. But so that's a good thing in a way. I suppose, though, you either recycle plastic or you recycle metal. But this stuff is flammable, so be careful with it. And it's very toxic, this stuff. So be careful using this. They do recommend using it out of doors. But anyway, so you have to use this on the leather first. And I sprayed this quite diligently all over the leather to waterproof this. But what is the Dryline? Well, if you don't do that anyway, that's to make the leather water repellent. The Dryline is like a Sympatex membrane system. So they are using a formulation of Sympatex, which is one of these membranes which will allow water vapor to pass one way, but liquid water not to go the other. Same principles essentially as Gore-Tex. And Sympatex has been around for a long time. I've had a lot of excellent experience with Sympatex in boots other than Gore-Tex, from full leather boots with Sympatex liners to non. So that also interested me a lot there. So just quickly, a rundown of these boots. Okay, you've got the great Vibram sole here, the Moulage sole. This is a slightly more modified sole at the top. You know, it's very stiff and sticky up here for edging, for climbing. As I said, for something like Via Ferrata or something like that, and just scrambling, heavy duty scrambling. The boot, even though it looks heavy, is not particularly heavy. I'll put the weight up in the description. Let's have a look at the construction. So I said 2.6 millimeter leather. It appears to be fairly well stitched together. My only concern is here on the front part, on the toe, you've got some stitching that runs across this webbing here to take the laces at the front, and methinks maybe that, you know, if you're one of these toe kickers, I'm not a toe kicker, but if you're a toe kicker, you might wear out that stitching there pretty quickly. However, if you are a toe kicker, this could easily be solved by simply placing, you know, a bit of a smear of urethane glue over the top of that, like wetsuit material, something like from Aquaseal, and that stuff is really super strong. It will bind to this webbing, and it also binds to the sticky rubber, and that would totally protect that. I may do that anyway yet, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, as I said, I've had these out in the snow. Slow. It's very beautiful. I found them pretty good. Now, what kind of boot are they? They said they could go across, you know, snow, glacier, that kind of thing. These are a single boot. Okay, these are a single boot. They don't have any insulation in them other than the Dryline membrane in there. They're fairly thinnish. This is, and also too, the tongue here, the tongue only comes to about here. Okay, the bellows tongue only protects up to about here. It's not right up to the top, which kind of surprised me. But anyway, I decided, as I said, to take these out in the snow, in the deep snow for, you know, walking around in all day, which was up to my knees, a little bit higher sometimes than my knees. I just want to talk about these Boreal Brentas, which you can't see here now in the snow. But how are they? Well, you know, they're not a boot for really below zero. I mean, you can cross snow with them, obviously, and ice on glaciers. But, you know, I have my feet up to here most of the day in snow. I haven't got gaiters on. And if you're moving, they're okay, for sure. But you don't want to be remaining still in boots like this for too long, because if you are, your feet are going to get cold. You know, you up here, if you're going to stay still for a long time, you're going to have a double boot, at least, if you're playing in the snow like this. You know, otherwise, your feet will get cold. You know, so we got to go up here. I'm going to take out the inner sole to show you here. This is the inner sole. It's something they're calling XTP. I have no idea what that XTP footbed system means. I couldn't find anything on their site from that. Maybe I wasn't looking hard enough. It's a simple inner sole. It's not like the inner sole. It's quite spongy, you know, so it will absorb a lot of impact there. Certainly, it's not like the Fitwell inner sole, how I showed you on the Fitwell boots, which actually has a whole lot of holes in it, big holes in it, and it actually pumps air as you tread on it through the sole of the feet to keep the sole of the foot dry, and it will also, you know, aid in insulation. But what this does have is under the toe region, you can see this reflective material, and while they don't talk about this again, I'm going to assume that this is to help reflect infrared radiation from the foot back into the ball of the foot and the toe region, which of course is what you really need in cold conditions, to help in cold conditions so you don't freeze your toes off. Now, because this is not a double wall boot or greater, it's not, despite them saying you can walk across glaciers and walk through a bit of snow and stuff like that, they also say if you're going to walk in snow all day, you should be wearing gaiters, obviously to help protect snow getting inside the boot, and also to aid in that, keeping water, any melting water that does happen to melt, off the top of the boot, regardless of this Dryline thing on there. Now, the other thing I'm going to say is if you intend on doing some early winter to mid-winter walks with these boots, they're not boots I would recommend really for below zero conditions. And why do I say that? Well, of course, if you're on the move, your feet are going to stay toasty warm with appropriate socks on and upper clothing. Especially upper clothing, because you're going to draw the heat from those extremities, your fingers and your toes, if you don't have appropriate clothing on the main part of the body and the head, of course. But if you're on the move, these boots, your feet should stay reasonably warm in them. But if you're remaining still for a long time, if you're huddled up in a snow, some kind of a snow cave, or you have to build a shelter, or whatever, or you're waiting around for people, or you're hanging off some rope somewhere, your feet may get cold in them because they're not, they're not a boot for below zero conditions, I believe anyway. And they don't, of course, say that on there. They're very cautious about what they do say the boot's intended purposes, other than via ferrata, which is pretty obvious with the stiffness and this sticky rubber rand on here. Boreal, they've been around for a long, long time. I've used their climbing shoes for a great many years climbing. I found the construction to be excellent, extremely hard wearing. Now, of course, that's climbing shoes. That's not climbing boots or walking boots as such. But I do like they're known for producing good quality footwear. Certainly, many of my friends that wear their boots, they haven't had a bad word to say about them. So that is just a quick blurb for the company. No, they did not give me these boots. They're not sponsoring me in any way, just in case you think they did. I bought these out of my own volition. Yeah. I decided to test out these boots on a hike that I normally go on quite often in summer. It's now kind of mid-winter, early mid-winter. And the snow, as you can see, I've got crampons on here. We have to cross a few patches of icy patches, so it's really necessary to have crampons just to make every step count, kind of thing. And the snow was, most of the day the snow was up to my knees, a little bit higher than my knees. So you can see I don't have on gaiters either. What I was saying earlier on about staying moving with these boots on, and they weren't boots for below zero conditions. We were on the move most of the day, and the only times we were remaining still for any amount of time would have been when we were preparing food or preparing something to drink. Now, I'm going to say right off, despite not wearing gaiters, I just had on overpants. Did my feet get wet when I got back to the civilization? Were my feet wet? Well, the answer to that is no. My feet were not wet. That's the first thing. Second thing was, did the leather of the boots get wet here or absorb any water after the treatment with this leather proofing material? And the answer is no, the leather did not get wet. There was no dark spots on the leather. I never noticed that whatsoever. So the leather didn't get wet and my feet did not get wet. Really easy to fit semi-automatic crampons. I mean, my semi-automatic crampons too, they're really old. They're like a pair of camp ice riders. I got them in Japan, walking in the mountains in Japan like 20 odd years ago. They're still really great crampons, the camp ice riders. I don't think camp make them anymore, but super strong, super sturdy. And I found the boots certainly did provide, they really did provide adequate stiffness in the sole here to be taking crampons exactly how they said. They weren't soft. Otherwise the crampons would move around a lot. because the boot would not be too stiff, and then you've got to continually readjust them, and they would not be good boots for crampons. But I can say definitely semi-automatic crampons. If they're going to take 20-year-old crampons, they're going to take modern day ones too, semi-automatics. Right, so I just want to sum up these boots then. So, but before I do that, the question is, how comfortable were they to wear all day on about a 7.5 hour hike? We were hiking for about 7.5 hours round trip. They were brand new on my feet. I didn't wear them around the streets at all beforehand. They were not broken in, if you like. How comfortable were they? And also I had crampons on them too for maybe, a good 3/4 of that hike. So I'm not going to be a liar if I said I did not get a blister. I got a blister on my right heel. That I could expect. They're brand new boots. They've never been walked in at all. So that brings me to the point of, do you need to walk in boots these days? Is it necessary? Can you pull a pair of boots out of the box and go hiking in them? Well, I guess that depends on what the condition, what kind of socks you're wearing, and what the kind of condition your feet are in. If you're not used to walking in boots, and I am actually, my daytime boots, my Fitwells, I'm walking in them all the time, but they've been long since broken in. My advice is you really do need to get your feet toughened up for walking in boots. Boots are not runners, and that will make a difference. But the blister was mild. Blisters are easily treatable. Blisters can be expected. If you don't get blisters, you're not serious. No boot is going to fit someone's foot perfectly. It's just not possible, because people's feet vary so much. So just quickly, these boots, the Boreal Brentas, new for 2021. They're available in half sizes too. For those that have got, finicky sized feet. They're quite narrow in profile too, so that makes them good. This is a narrow sole for via ferrata and scrambling over difficult conditions. So what do I say about them? Fantastic. Bush Camping Tools says, yep, totally recommend these boots for fooling around. At least into the conditions that you've seen me here. But remember, they are not a boot to be remaining still in for a long, long time. But they're a pretty hardcore boot that can take a crampon. You can cross ice with them. You can tramp through icy snow, make ground quickly with them. Just use this stuff on them to waterproof the leather, because the leather itself is not waterproof, but the membrane certainly does keep the feet dry. Okay, there you go. Boreal Brentas, Bush Camping Tools here. Thanks for watching.